Hello everybody, welcome back to the Music Gauntlet channel. I hope you all are having a wonderful day so far, and today I'm just going to be talking about a few more albums that have come out over these past couple of weeks that I just want to talk about. All of these projects are fresh in my mind as I needed to cleanse my ears after the horrid experience that was A Certified Lover Boy. But now let's get into the projects that I want to discuss in a little bit more detail, starting with Grip's I Died for This. For anybody that doesn't know, Grip is a rising artist out of Atlanta that was recently signed to Eminem's Shady Records label. He released a stellar project in 2019 called Snub Nose that admittedly I had only found because I was making a joke playlist of songs that have cheese in the title, and I found a song Swiss Cheese, and I was like, oh, this is actually pretty good. But I'm not gonna stand here and say that I was a big fan of his music. I had passively enjoyed his music, but once I had heard him under the context of a major label, I really dig this project. I definitely hear the room for growth by just an outline saying that this project could definitely be more tight, more compact. There are some filler moments. As much as I appreciate him detailing his struggle and him almost giving up on his rap career before being signed, there were moments when I felt like he was dragging out the story a little bit too much. Like, he came into the project looking to give his background and his come up and how he got to the point where he's at now, which is cool, and he does do a great job a majority of the time of detailing that struggle. There were just moments that were drawn out a little too much, and I wasn't given much to really be entertained throughout the song. And that's looking at Enemy and Con Man. A lot of the songs fell more towards the latter half for me personally. The ones that I found to be less enjoyable, that is. I really don't mind when Grip sings like on Enemy. It doesn't bother me as much as I've seen other people say it's the major downside to this project. It's just not the most exhilarating either. It kind of makes for a dull moment. But what makes these duller moments stand out so much are because there are other moments in the project that are just straight heat. And that's looking at the title track, Gutter, Walkthrough, The Locks. Penny's Exit Stage Left has been in my constant rotation. I have listened to that song pretty much every time I've gone to the gym since the album dropped. Those riffs are so badass. I really like the parallel he draws on Hands Up to people having hands up in a crowd and hands up to the cops. At first, you don't really think it's about that, and then you can hear the backing vocals say something like, they're gonna shoot us anyways. Royce da 5'9" sounded intellectual and clean as always, and shout out Eminem for actually coming through with a toned down verse, not going too crazy with it. Of course, he had to end his verse with a bar that I've heard like multiple times in the past couple of years, but at least he wasn't going overboard with the speed rapping. I actually enjoyed hearing him and Grip say the same lines at the same time. I thought that was really cool. I do want to mention as a downside though, that Grip sounded pretty much exactly like Kendrick on Humble on Glenwood Freestyle, like pretty much to a T. He did not hide it. I think there is a more condensed project within here. This would be a really good 45-minute album, but it just stretches a little too long for me to hold my interest all the way throughout. Grip exemplifies being a really potent and skilled rapper. He showcases his ability to paint a vivid picture while also wearing his emotions on his sleeve. He doesn't really hide much for this album. He bears it all, which I really do appreciate. With a few skips here and there, I can definitely see coming back to this album. I have not heard his 2017 project Porch, so out of the two that I have heard, I will say that Snub Nose is my favorite out of the two, but only because it's a more condensed version. I can see his next project after this being the best one he's ever made. Considering this was his Shady label debut, I get wanting to explain your story, make the first album about your come up, and now from here it's just, now is your time to blow everybody away, so I can't wait for the next release. And don't get me wrong, there are very strong highlights on I Died for This. It's definitely worth checking out. Halsey has returned with a somewhat controversial album with her album If I Can't Have Love, I Want Power. I say controversial because people were throwing a temper tantrum about her showing her tit on Instagram, and I guess other people want to show their tits on Instagram, so they were mad at her for getting away with it, but my opinion is I don't care. There was this big dispute when I was in high school that Halsey was ripping off Lorde with her Badlands album, and I was such a big Lorde fan that I was just kind of like, yeah, frick Halsey for doing that. But then I actually came back to it a few years later and realized there's a decent amount of songs on here I actually enjoy. Don't let media influence your opinion, okay? This is a lesson to you all. And it's been like that ever since. There are songs I genuinely love by her now, like Alone and Nightmare, and you can't deny that Without Me is catchy as hell. But through this all, I was just under the impression that, okay, Halsey makes pretty solid pop music that I enjoy listening to now and again. What I was not expecting was her to go so off the rails with this most recent project, like, Jesus. The highlights on this project are just fantastic. Like, my favorite song on here has to be Easier Than Lying. That song is one of my favorites of this year. She seems to be pivoting in a bit more of a pop-punk direction with this project, which hasn't been done the most justice in recent years, but if she makes it sound as kick-ass and aggressive as it does here, then I am here for it. But I can't even say this is a true blue pop-punk record because there are still a handful of moments when she's dipping into that pop bag, but It sounds more refined because she has the story element to it. The narrative is one that's been told time and time again, that being artists and how they deal with the fame that they've achieved, but Halsey sounds so surreal on this project. Like the opening cut, The Tradition, it's a softer moment, but it still cuts so deep. The airiness surrounded by the piano keys just adds to the effect of Halsey almost reflecting on the point that she's made it to, and how you can almost see the flashback she's having of being in front of a crowd but not being happy about it because she genuinely doesn't feel happy. But through the album, she is figuring out how to bring this power back to herself. She is no longer confined by the rules of this mortal world, in a way. She feels as though through the process of childbirth that because she has offered her body as a vessel for that baby to be produced into this world, it's given her a greater purpose other than just being a bit of a show pony for the whole world. Of course, she adores her fans and the fame at times, but being pregnant with her own baby is what made her realize that there's a lot more depth to life than she even realized before. I kind of see where she was going with this, where the first half of the album is about her struggle with love and fame, and then once it hits the point 11/21, which is the date she found out she was pregnant, it starts to switch more towards being about her pregnancy and husband. But for as detailed as a concept as this is, I don't think it was carried out the best. Like, it just seems to fall apart a little bit in the second half, and the idea overall becomes a little muddied, because I feel as though she was making an attempt to have a new outlook on the situations that she puts herself in, but it really didn't vary as much as you would think it would. Like the track I'm Not a Woman, I'm a God easily could have been slipped in the first half and would have fit almost better. It has the same bipolar tongue-in-cheek manner as Lilith earlier on the album, but I'd rather listen to Lilith because it was a better executed song. But even then, despite the album tripping over itself a little bit, I think this is one of Halsey's, if not her strongest album. It's just extremely focused, and sitting at 42 minutes, I really don't mind sitting through the tracks I don't care for as much. The instrumentation and incorporation of synths I thought was really well done throughout the album. That and having sticky choruses like on Girl Is a Gun make for some really catchy songs. And like I mentioned, when she really indulges with the rock sound like on Easier Than Lying in the Lighthouse, she sounds so good. I almost wish the whole album was like this because it's just so lethal. I see the potential for this album to be better than it is, but I'm still really pleased with this output. Other than some production credits, like obviously, I'm still really impressed with the fact that she handled this pretty much entirely herself. I really want to hear Halsey continue to push her sound because the songs that she comes up with on this project are some of the best she's ever released. For my album rankings, I would have to say yes, this is my new favorite Halsey album, I would say pretty easily, and then followed by Maniac, then we'll do Badlands, and then Hopeless Fountain Kingdom. I still don't like that album to this day, other than Alone. Finally, the last album I want to talk about is Little Simz, I Might Be Introvert. UK MC Little Simz is back with her 4th studio album, and if you didn't get your fill of artists struggling with fame from Halsey, then give this album a spin because goddamn. Simz is so vulnerable on this album. She is putting so much emotion and care into her lyrics on this thing. It's almost mind-blowing. Which, don't get me wrong, it was showcased on her Gray Area album in 2018, but here she's focusing on those aspects, those qualities that make her an introvert. She's basically sitting you, the listener, down and being like, look, I can be an extrovert when I'm on tour, when I'm being this rapper persona, but you should know that me being the person I am, I'm not always gonna be like that. And here are reasons why. And some of these ideas on paper may not be the most engaging, but the soundscape and detailed production on this album is so good. Just from the first track alone, those horns immediately drawed me into the album. I think I honestly like the production more on this album than I do her rapping, and that's not even to say her rapping's bad. It's actually pretty stellar. It just goes to show you the amount of thought and care that she puts into her own albums. For anybody that's downplaying the intro to your album, it serves such great importance because this song was the perfect setup for the rest of the album. It was just dramatic enough to pull you in and make you care about what she was about to say. The instrumentals, the samples, the backing choir, every element to the production made these songs pop. I think this is beautifully exemplified on I Love You, I Hate You, where she's detailing her relationship with her father that was never present in her life. And god, dude, the sample for the hook is so good. It's easier to stargaze than be faced with my reality. Is you a sperm donor or a dad to me? Bruh. God, this whole album was full of lines that were just so potent. They hit so hard. This album isn't a woe is me scenario though, because there are plenty of moments that exemplify Little Simz being worried about things in her life, but overcoming them because of the point that she's reached. She knows that because she's at the point that she's at now, it's worth it. What she's doing is loved by many people. Standing Ovation has that duality of, you guys want me to be this bigger than life persona, and it's kind of hard for me. However, I do deserve my flowers, so you can give me an ovation. Tracks like Rollin' Stone and Point to Kill do have Little Simz being on her ship, but they also express a little bit of insecurity, as if she's making these songs to reassure herself that she deserves to be where she's at. And she surmises this whole experience on How Did You Get Here, where she's reflecting on moments when she could have given up, but knew that in her heart this is what she was meant to do. Sometimes I Might Be Introvert was a deep mental reflection for Little Simz, and that's just painted very clearly for the listener. I really enjoy hearing how she's able to balance being unsure of her position with confidence. Confidence that she feels almost is pushed on her from her fans, but she also feels within herself, but doesn't want to force it. If there weren't as many interludes, I would appreciate them more, but it comes off to be a bit of a time waster. And there were also other moments where I felt like the production on a track wasn't enough to make it feel like it was completely worth being in the track list, like Protect My Energy, for instance. I understand how people are saying this is one of, if not their favorite albums to come out of this year so far, but for me it's a little bit too long-winded and doesn't come all the way full circle for me to be in love with it. By no means does this album disappoint, and I think it's an extremely strong output, one of the best hip-hop releases of this year. I mean, just with production alone I could say that, but it isn't a complete home run for me. I feel like there's still that grand slam of an album inside of her, one that takes the concepts that she's going for and fleshes them out so much that I can't help but be amazed. There are moments like that on this album, but it's not a complete experience like that for me. As far as her album rankings would go, I will admit that I'm slacking a little bit on her catalog. I haven't heard her first 3 releases. I need to get on that for sure. But out of the albums that I have heard, I will say Gray Area is still my favorite of hers just by how compact that release is. Nearly every single song hits on that project for me as well. Then followed by Sometimes I Might Be Introvert, and the third album that I've heard by her, Stillness in Wonderland. And yeah, I believe that is all I got for you guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you made it all the way into the end, you know I more than appreciate that, and this is just my opinion. I would love to know your guys' opinion as well. Did you like these albums more than I did? Did you like them less than I did? Let me know in the comments section, or you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter, links in the description, and we can talk about it there. If you want to leave a like or subscribe, I always appreciate that as well. My plan is to cover the new releases from Baby Keem and James Blake, so I plan to have that video up sometime next week. And that's all I got for you guys. I'll see you in the next one. Peace. I say controversial because people were throwing a fit about her showing her tit. A fit with a tit. That should not have made me laugh. I'm such a child.